Nerd and Normie Podcast. I'm a big film nerd, Everett.
And I'm Emerald, and I'm dating a nerd.
On this week's episode, we will be covering The Fast and the Furious 6 through 9. For all of these, we will be just going straight into spoilers, and then we will jump to Fast X, the new one. And for that one, we will do non-spoilers first, and then spoilers, and for all of this, time codes will be below. Alright, let's get into it.
It's time to prepare for what's coming.
You might want to buckle up.
Alright, so Fast 6 is the first one that brings someone back from the dead. So, I believe. It's not surprising, really, but in this one, Hobbs assembles the team to send them on a mission, and Dom finds out that Letty is still alive and that she lost her memory. So it's basically him just trying to get her back.
Yeah, and it's also, 5 still kind of exists in a plausible deniability of they are trying to rob someone and they have fast cars. Yeah, it's a little more than a little over the top. But this is the first one. There is a second team of these crazy spies who travel across the world to steal these crazy weapons. And in this one, they're after some massive tech stuff and whatever, and they have specialized cars that turn into ramps and launch people, and it's very spy oriented, and they're brought in by the government as like contract operators and to bring down this evil team, and Letty's on the evil team. And yeah, it's fun, it's goofy, I don't think is like fully gone insane as they will later.
I think this one was a little boring.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's not as good as 5, and it's not as dumb as some of the later ones, so it kind of falls as just a generic action, like, super spy movie.
But yeah, the villain in this one is just kind of boring. I mean, I do like the actor, but I feel like
it's Luke Evans.
Yeah, Luke Evans. I don't feel like he was either crazy enough, threatening enough, or human enough to be a real villain. So it was just like, eh.
Yeah. And then this is also the first one to really use the trope of if you hit a car, it will break your fall. Because at the end, Luke Evans and his team have a tank on a highway and are shooting at them and whatever, and Dom's Dodge Charger is magically able to fight tanks and do all these crazy stunts, and he launches himself off his own car into the air to catch a falling Letty, and they break their fall by slamming into the windshield of another car and are totally fine.
Which then becomes just a trope of the series where, like, if there's a car beneath you or water, you will not get hurt regardless of the height of the fall.
Yeah, and then, like, back in the 5th one, The Rock falls onto a car and does get hurt. He breaks a couple ribs in his arm and a leg or something. He then flexes his way out of the cast before he's supposed to, but, there were still somewhat of stakes. And previously, Letty had supposedly died, and we started a new romance with Elena, which just creates this weird gray area that hangs over the series going forward. But yeah, in this one, Letty comes back, and it's the start of a trope in which nobody stays dead in these movies. And it really starts to undercut any stakes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of all I really have to say about the 6. So we'll move on now to Furious 7,
which I liked better because I found what's his name?
Jason Statham.
I found Jason Statham to be a better villain because he had a real reason. They got his brother locked up, whatever. But he's also, like, ends up being a regular character in the film franchise because he is a person. Like, he understands, the different stakes and everything. And, like, I don't know. And plus I like him as an actor. I think he's cool.
Yeah, and I think he's a good foil to Dom in that they both are doing this for family. So you can't really point at him as just some idiot
yeah.
because, you know, this is the same thing our heroes are doing, and we understand him within the context of this franchise. And yeah, Jason Statham is just fun.
Yeah. But this one was the one that had two villains, and the other villain, completely pointless, random, weird, didn't need to be in it.
Yeah, and that second villain, he's after this thing called God's Eye, which can locate any person as long as they're within viewing distance of any camera on the globe. It can hack into the camera and stuff. And again, we fully entered super spy territory. They're, you know, flying around the globe using crazy gadgets.
Is this the first one where they have the agency? Like just that random Mr. Nobody who works for a random agency that...
I think it might be, yeah.
Who also isn't really a relevant character to me. I get that it gives them a reason to go on these missions and like gives them someone to save them anytime something's too impossible to get out of, but it's just like,
yeah,
okay.
He's a plot device. Yeah. It's a little bit like in Mission Impossible, the guy who, you know, gives them their mission at the start of the movie if you choose to accept it kind of vibe. And he sets them into motion. And then also, however he's used, it's like, oh no, how are we possibly going to do this? He shows up and rescues them. Or
yeah.
How are we possibly going to do this? He shows up and goes, oh hey, I have this for you.
Yeah. And so it's just like, literally there's no stakes going forward at all.
Yeah.
Which they kind of lean into it. They like make jokes about how they're like Roman. He always talks about how they must be invincible because they never get hurt no matter what they do. So it's starting to lean into the absurdity of it, but only I feel like certain characters are ever in on the absurdity.
Anyone who is not in the immediate vicinity of Dom will be in on the joke. As soon as you are around Dom or Dom is in a scene, it is the most serious, dramatic moment about family and faith and just, you know, it's pretty funny. I don't think these movies would be doing as well if Vin Diesel as a human wasn't so fascinating and like
absurd
obsessed with these movies and thinking like it really feels like he thinks these are high art, dramatic, telling people about the world and family movies, and everybody around him is just in a dumb action movie for a paycheck.
Yeah.
And it kind of works, but if it was anyone other than Vin Diesel, I think this falls apart very quickly and just becomes, you know, kind of like when they tried to reboot Jason Bourne with Jeremy Renner. It's like, well, you don't have a character I care about in Jason Bourne anymore. You just have a guy running around doing generic spy stuff. That's what these movies are. But because you have Vin Diesel at the core of it, it works.
Yeah, that's really all I have to say about the seventh one. Obviously, they get Letty back. The other lady who... Or that was the last one, but whatever. They get Letty back in that one. The lady who was supposed to be with Dom or was dating Dom is just like, if my husband came back from the dead, I'd leave you. It's fine. So
she just walks away.
And then she's kind of in this one for 2 seconds, but that's it.
Yeah, so we've lost Giselle in the sixth one, which is Han's love interest, Gal Gadot. And that kind of plays on Han's character in this, but in this one we also get some more background, or actually I think it ends the sixth that we see Jason Statham may have killed Han or been involved, but then also Mr. Nobody's somehow involved in this whole death of Sun Kang.
Jason Statham was the one who killed Han in Tokyo Drift, and that's how number 7 starts, is him leaving Dom a message that he started, or that he killed Han, as a way to start a war between them.
So this one ends with a street fight between Vin Diesel and Jason Statham because, you know, that's been this kind of whole thing, is that the street always wins, and then Dom single-handedly kicks the ground where it's starting to break and shatters an entire building and drops it on himself and Jason Statham. And Paul Walker comes in and tries to rescue Dom and starts giving him compressions. And Letty pulls him off and is like, no, leave him. And then she's like, don't leave me, Dom. And with the power of love,
brings him back to life.
He comes back to life.
Yeah, Paul Walker's trying to give him compressions, and those don't work because only tears and love and family can bring you back from the dead.
Yeah. And so
she regains her memories too.
Oh yeah, that's just like tossed in there at the end. She's like, no, I remember everything now. It all just came back to me. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Moving on. And so then they go, and they're all kind of just like on the beach, chilling at the end, and Paul Walker is there with his wife and kids and stuff. And then he and Dom get in their cars and
they have to do
off.
like one final race, and then they split up and leave because they have to write Paul Walker out of the franchise because he did unfortunately pass away. So they had to write him out. They used his brother kind of as to fill in for the spots in the movie that he wasn't there to finish, and CGI'd his face somewhat poorly over
for the era, it was as good as you could hope for.
And then he's not in the other movies, obviously,
but he's talked about.
He's talked about. I think maybe they should have somehow written him out of the franchise, because every time they go on a mission from now on, they're like, yeah, Brian's just chilling at home with the kids.
Yeah, I think you don't want to kill him in movie because he died in real life, but at the same time, their reasoning of just like, no, he's a family man now, when the whole point of this movie was that he's struggling being a family man and doesn't want to be one. And then in later movies, we see these same characters being, oh, Brian can't come because he's got to watch his kids, but we can ditch our kids to go on this super crazy mission.
Yeah.
It feels like, I don't know, and I don't know a better way to have done it other than probably just like stop talking about Brian. But I also kind of get from especially Vin Diesel being so family centric in these and trying to create like that for the cast in the outside world and make it more than just a movie kind of thing. He doesn't want to just let one of the most influential parts of the franchise drop off the map.
Yeah.
So it does leave them in a weird situation. But that then leads us into Fate of the Furious,
which is full spy
absurdity.
Yeah, no, there's barely any driving in these anymore. Like, there's like 10 minutes of driving scenes as much as there would be in any action movie, and then it's just
spies. And
crazy.
There's Charlize Theron with dreadlocks is trying to get again a super tech weapon thing, and they have to try and hunt her across the globe as she hunts them.
And with this
one's evil Dom.
Yeah. And he's evil because first of all, we don't know why he originally agreed to go with her, because I guess she threatened his family, and then when he shows up on the plane, she was like, I have your ex-girlfriend who secretly had your baby.
And he's like, what? No, I didn't know. And it's like, wait, so then why did you go?
Yeah. And then he also lets Charlize Theron make out with him for a bit. Them in front of Letty, and she's like, you didn't have to do that. You could have stopped me, but you chose not to.
Like, she literally says that in the movie.
Yeah.
That it's his fault and I'm just like, wait, what? And this is really where the gray area of Dom's treatment of women, like, I get action movies are not known for their accurate depictions of relationships. However, the way Dom objectifies Letty constantly, only ever says I love you once in a while, and just like keeps her on a hook, strings her along, uses her in action scenes and whatever, she goes evil, comes back, doing all this kind of stuff, is just very like obsessive and controlling. And then he's got this ex-girlfriend that the second she died, he ends up falling in love with her, and they have this beautiful relationship, and then Letty comes back and they part ways, but he still like kisses her goodbye and whatever. And when
she comes back and is threatened, before he even sees the kid, he's like, don't kill her, I love her, you know?
Yeah, he's still like very like, he ditches Letty and starts working for a team that's trying to kill them in order to save this woman, and then finds out he has a son with her,
who is a small ginger boy who ends up not being ginger at all in the other movies.
The ethnicities of any character are just
ambiguous.
Yeah, they throw a dart at the map of the world, and whatever country it hits is the ethnicity of that character for this particular movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it's just, And then, going forward, Elena, the second girlfriend who has the daughter or has the son with Dom, ends up getting shot in the head brutally by Charlize Theron, just to prove a point to Dom. And she'd already named her kid.
Yeah.
And then Vin Diesel Dom changes the name of the child to honor his friend.
Yeah.
Brian, who's not even dead in this world.
Yep. And I mean, like, whatever. I guess Brian got to name their son after Vin Diesel's dad. So I guess he had no names left. But he could have, I don't know, in memory of the dead woman who carried the child, kept his name.
Yeah. So, very weird. Anyway, it ends with them driving cars across ice, being chased by a giant submarine, and...
But better than that, it ends with a very big fight scene between Jason Statham and a billion men while carrying a baby, which is one of the best... It's probably the best fight scene in the franchise. It's so cute and funny, and just...
It's one of the few times they're actually inventive and create a fun scenario where he has to do some work to get around an obstacle of carrying the baby. And he's also like
silly and fun with the baby.
He like keeps checking in on the kid and playing music for him, putting headphones on him, like
hence why he's
around.
A fun character.
Yeah, and it's really the only like good part about this movie, other than the fact that they're starting to lean into just stupidity and absurd stuff. But yeah, I think it starts to go back downhill here for me, and just that it's boring and long, and it just feels dumb, and not enough characters are in on the joke.
And they push a missile away with their arm.
Yes, The Rock pushes a missile or a torpedo through the ice out of his way so that it doesn't hit them, and hits a car that he wants it to.
All right, going into F9. So this one starts with a flashback of Dom when he's younger and the event that killed his father.
Played by a real actor, which we were not convinced this wasn't some weird CGI Uncanny Valley human, but apparently they're real.
Yeah, he looks very
no offense to him,
Uncanny Valley, right in the almost fake looking human. But a lot of people do in these, I think, later on, because almost everything is like green screen and CGI, that it's just hard to tell. Who is also, well, he's actually from New Zealand, but he is a darker skinned man.
Certainly darker than Vin Diesel.
Way darker than Vin Diesel. I think he's supposed to be like Hispanic-ish, Latinx of some sort. And this movie introduces John Cena's character, which is Jacob, Vin Diesel's brother, who technically caused the death of their father, but not really, and got banished, and now he's a super spy person.
Yeah, and for a guy obsessed with family, he never mentions the brother that he cut off from his life and all of this stuff, of course, and whatever. And then not only does he cut his brother off and he comes back looking for revenge as a super spy, because that's what he's become naturally.
And they go to space.
Yep.
That's the movie. Yep. It's fine. Han comes back from the dead.
Yeah, that's also turns out to be orchestrated by Mr. Nobody, the classic get out of jail free card.
No questions asked. He just comes back and they weren't like, you could have hinted to us that you were alive, buddy. We mourned you for years and went to your funeral.
Yep.
Nope. Also, Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez live on a cute little farm and have, their son, and that's really cute, and that's what I want to be doing. And also their son in this one is, you guessed it, white, but not in the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just all are switching ethnicities a lot during this franchise. But anyways, they're living there on the farm. Their son knows how to hide from bad guys. They're bored of being parents and want to go do other things. And they go on a big adventure. As per usual, hijinks ensues. Roman is stupid. Yeah.
Yep. basically Charlize Theron is back with an awful bowl cut instead of dreadlocks.
Oh God, it's so awful. They do her dirty in this franchise.
Yeah, and she's back and is is held by Jacob and then John Cena's character, and then they end up kind of working together, and then she betrays him, and so he teams up with Vin Diesel naturally because everyone ends up teaming up with Vin Diesel, and then they save the day, and it's just. And
then at the end, they're friends with John Cena again, and they have a barbecue.
Yep, always ends with a barbecue. And yeah, honestly, I don't have much more to say about this one. This nearly broke me. This movie, particularly right after 8, it's so unnecessary and long, and.
Yeah, that's the other thing is all of these movies are like 2 hours or more.
Yeah. And
it's so long when you've watched them all.
Yeah, and they're trying to be cool, slick action movies, but they're lacking the like practical stunts of Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible movies. They're lacking the suave nature of James Bond.
Yeah, because like Top Gun Maverick, it's exactly like every other action movie, but it was phenomenal because it was practically done for most of it. Like it's...
Yeah, it feels
the
real.
stakes are there.
Yeah. Whereas this, it's lots of CGI cars and planes and nothing follows the laws of physics. And so there's no reason to care. Han's now back from the dead. Letty's back from the dead. Dom was resurrected like 3 times in one movie.
But at least they did do... I think this is the one they had that street race at the beginning for respect.
Oh, yes. In Cuba.
But I feel like that's more to their nature, And
yeah.
then now, the rest of it was just unbearable.
Yeah, so this one was really particularly rough, but it at least set us up going into Fast 10.
Fast 10.
As I look out at this wonderful family, I am filled with so much pride.
So Fast 10. This is a spoiler-free part. Man, this is hard to do without spoilers because it's just action all the way through. There's never...
It is nonstop. This ended up being so bad it's good territory.
For sure.
The last ones were just kind of bad, long, and boring. This one's bad, long, and off the walls insane.
Yeah, not only do they lean into the absurdity, they bring it up.
They bring up the absurdity, and of course, not only do they have everyone else double down on the absurdity, they have Vin Diesel double down on the emotional stakes of his character, and he is trying to give a art house Oscar bait performance in and amongst the most dumb movie outside of the Jurassic World sequels that I have seen in 10 years.
But it is everything to me. This one,
it was fun.
I would rewatch this one.
100%.
The other ones, it was just kind of... Well, another thing is we watched them back to back to back, so that's why I would probably never rewatch those, because it was just painful to get through all of them like that. But
at the same time, like, neither of us were really looking forward to going to this one at this point. We'd been a little burnt out on Fast and Furious, and within probably 5 minutes, I was on board.
Yeah, my jaw was dropped. I'm squealing, laughing. They have every celebrity cameo you can think of.
If it's not an action scene, there is a cameo from a celebrity.
It is bananas and so funny to me.
Yeah. In particular, I want to highlight Jason Momoa.
Oh my gosh.
I think so they wrote the script, they sent it to the actors or whatever that they had on board, and everyone else was like, oh yeah, okay,
run-of-the-mill Fast and Furious.
Yeah, we'll play our comedy parts from Ludacris, and Tyrese Gibson will play, a bit more serious from Han and Letty, or Michelle Rodriguez, and Sung Kang. And then Jason Momoa read that and went, this is the dumbest movie I've ever seen. I'm going to just have the most fun.
So fun.
I'm going to request the wardrobe department just gives me cool fashion stuff that I like to wear in my regular life.
Yeah, not one shirt that he wears is not made of silk and a fun color. He's so fun.
It's wild. He's just out there. It's crazy. And it's so polar opposite to everything you've seen before in this franchise.
Yeah.
He is not serious. He is not... Yeah, he's trying to kill people and on a mission and whatever, and if you've seen the trailers, you know that. But he is not doing it like everyone else in this franchise before, and boy, did these movies need this.
Yeah. It awoke something in me that no other performance has in a while.
And I'm not saying this is like, you know, Joaquin Phoenix in The Master crazy man performance, or like even anything else. This is its own category of performance.
Yeah, it's like if everyone else was in a student film, that's where their acting is, and Jason Momoa is just... I don't even know how to explain. He's like the puppeteer of all of this craziness in this movie, and he like is giggling, laughing, wearing pigtails, like just everything. It's
insane. And I again, like, it's not that it's a good performance, but it's the perfect performance for this movie. Any other movie, that performance, everyone's like, oh my god, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. But because everything else around him is so seriously absurd, that when he's just chaotic absurd, it works.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch.
And back to that student film comment, this is something I leaned over in the theater and I said, wow, this acting is like in a student film. And that's like no slight on my friends who I, went to film school with and were pursuing acting. They're clearly students, and that's what you're supposed to be. You're learning your craft. You're a little too sincere in the sincere moments. You're a little too emotional. You don't, things are a little heightened, or you don't know how to make something that's crazy sound realistic. Like Brie Larson, again, wonderfully talented person.
Yeah, she's a very good actress in anything else.
But when you're being asked to say lines like, the agency sent me and I'm doing this because of this and I'm gonna blah blah, like just spouting all this exposition about someone, not even like they've given it an acronym or something, they're just calling it the agency.
Yeah.
And when you're being forced to talk about this like it's the most serious thing in the world, you're gonna look stupid. Yeah. And she's being asked to be serious about it, and that's why it looks so bad. Whereas nobody, for even 1 second, asked Jason Momoa to act seriously about this movie.
Yeah. And it's every other Fast and Furious. You know what I mean? There's nothing in this one that's unique to this one. But
someone from their past comes back, is hunting them, also after a super weapon of some sort, and they must stop them.
But I will say, something that the Fast and Furious franchise does is, even though they're going to get in a chase scene or whatever it is, and it's going to be crazy and stupid stuff is going to happen, you never know how they're going to get out of it. And every time they do, it's just bananas.
We will go into this in spoilers, but I want to make sure I bring it up so I remember to talk about it then. And again, this is no spoilers right now. But there is a moment in the third act with John Cena that had us laughing so hard.
We had to cover our mouths. The people around us were here for a serious movie, and we are cackling in the theater.
It was a lot of fun, and I know, like, this is not the type of movie to go to if you're looking for a serious action movie or any sort of like actual movie. But if you just want to watch the dumbest thing you've ever seen and have a great time while you're doing it, go see this movie. It's worth it. Go with a bunch of friends, go to the bar beforehand or whatever, and just enjoy what this movie is. Get a big group of people and just all be laughing and having fun. Don't go in expecting the earnest family narrative. Like, that's there from Vin Diesel because it's Vin Diesel, but it's so funny.
Yeah. I think that's really all I have to say for the non-spoiler part.
I will say one last thing I kind of want to touch on. If you are a fan of like Michelle Rodriguez's character, and even to some extent any side character who is not Vin Diesel or Jason Momoa, they're not really in it. They're all sent on wild goose chases, and they're not central to the plot necessarily. And I think that is, as much fun as I had with this movie, it was a little disappointing that they didn't, have each of these characters interact with Jason Momoa, because it could have been really fun. And I know there's more to come and whatever, so there's more time for this kind of stuff to happen.
But like a conversation with Roman and Jason Momoa?
Oh my word, it would be insane.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's, I think for the last 4 or 5 movies in this franchise, every time Ludacris and Tyrese Gibson and then Ramsey, I forget that actor's name, they end up together, and they're always together. Yeah. Michelle Rodriguez is either by herself or with Vin Diesel.
Yep.
And so it's like, and Sung Kang is, and
Han?
No, the Meg guy. Jason Statham. Sung Kang and Jason Statham kind of always just float from group.
Sorry, I couldn't understand what you said. I thought you said the mid guy, and I was like, why is he mid? Sorry, continue.
So Jason Statham and Sung Kang's characters they'll sort of float between groups, but they also stay on the kind of periphery. And I think that's the one thing lacking in this franchise, is they don't suddenly pair people who normally wouldn't have been paired together to see what happens. Like watching Michelle Rodriguez team up with Tyrese Gibson would be really funny, because they are so opposite, and but they never really interact ever.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one weakness, is there's not a great group dynamic, and there's not a lot of testing of these characters. They put them right back in the same roles we've seen them all in before, but thanks to Jason Momoa, the movie still works.
Yep.
All right, that's it for non-spoilers. We are now going to move into spoilers for Fast X. Where to begin?
I think we should talk cameos first.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of them, and none of them are particularly necessary, I would say. Which is where, I'll start off talking about Pete Davidson.
Oh my word.
We already don't like him. We think he's annoying and pointless. But in this movie, he's more annoying and more pointless. Literally no reason for him to be in it, not even once. My favorite cameo is Debbie Ryan and her husband, Josh Dunn, who just randomly run into John Cena and Dom's son at the airport. That's it. Just bump into them. Don't say anything. That's it. So fun. I love her. I think she's also equally as crazy as Fast and Furious is. But yeah, Pete Davidson shows up. He works at like a weird store that sells stuff on the black market and is just pointless to the story.
Yep. And not only is he pointless to the story, that whole thing, it literally is like, oh, we need to go here to get black market stuff, and then they get there and Pete Davidson turns them in and they go away, and then they're like, oh, we're still in the same position. It adds nothing. It doesn't move a single thing forward.
Are like weirdly throwing flour or something around that I didn't understand, and maybe we're just dumb, but it's not like it's from any of the other movies, because we just watched all of them.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. And then also like he just has like magic mushroom muffins that Sung Kang takes, and it's like, why are we? And then it's like,
he only trips out for maybe half a second, and then it's just normal.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, we're watching, Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris get angry at each other and start fighting in the store, and they push each other a bunch and start hitting each other, and Sung Kang gets high and it makes weird shapes, and then we move on completely.
Yeah. Very
and then he
weird.
goes to get Jason Statham in the next scene, and I was like, oh, it'd be really funny to see him like
high.
Tripping out, and Jason Statham trying to beat him up and stuff because he thinks he's coming for revenge. It would be kind of funny, but no, he's just completely back. And then Jason Statham has a man in his punching bag.
Yeah, a weird, almost naked man who just runs away.
And they hit him with a car because they don't know he's in the punching bag or whatever, and then he gets out and just runs away and is in the background of shot running as they're just like chilling. And it again adds nothing. I don't know why it's there, but it's hilarious.
So odd.
And then in terms of cameos of characters who have come before. Right at the end, Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, and Charlize Theron have been stuck in Black Site prison or whatever and end up having to fight their way out together for reasons. And again, this is where, like, Michelle Rodriguez is barely in the movie, and literally it cuts away from the climactic action scene to watch her walk across Antarctica for 30 seconds. And it's just, it, again, adds nothing other than her fighting Charlize Theron for a minute or two.
And it's like they probably had to do all these things because it's a part one, so that they can set up for whatever's to come. But, like, for this one, it just seemed very out of place.
Yeah, and it just, every time it cut back, it was, oh yeah, Michelle Rodriguez is in this movie.
And as they're going across Antarctica, the submarine that Cypher had stolen in one of the other movies pulls out of the ice, and the door opens, and Giselle Gal Gadot is just in it.
Despite having been thrown from a plane moving 100 miles an hour down a runway in a previous movie. Because, again, nobody ever dies in these.
Yeah, but it's also like, why are they so forgiving? Like, Michelle Rodriguez is just like, oh my gosh, and is, like, smiling. If it was me, and I found out that my friend not only abandoned, you know, Han, who was in love with her, and abandoned us and didn't speak with us, but she was working with this evil villain who we've been fighting for 3 movies.
Yeah. Weird choice. And then the other past character, there's like a post-credit scene. And the whole build-up to this movie has been the supposed feud between Vin Diesel and The Rock, and how The Rock refuses to come back and is slagging him off and saying he's awful to work with and I'll never be back in these, and Vin Diesel being like, no, it's family, we've got to do this together or whatever, and we wait for your return. And I was under the impression that this wasn't happening and The Rock would not be in this. But he turns around and he's in the post-credit scene, and he's looking kind of old.
Yeah, I didn't think it was him because he was in like a full mask. I thought they were just alluding that it was him and they were going to kill him off to kind of explain why The Rock wasn't in it. But then he took off his mask and he has a little old gray beard and he's just hanging out.
Yeah, and so it makes me kind of wonder if that was all like a publicity stunt, or if they were like, hey, we'll literally give you like $50 million, because the budget of this movie is like $250-300 million. Like, they probably threw him a good $10 million just to walk on screen for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes, 5 seconds is more accurate.
Yeah.
And so he'll probably be in the next one, which I guess is okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying this era of The Rock. I liked back when he was in like Fast 5.
Yeah, I liked when he was like silly goofy. But whatever.
Yeah. So those are kind of the cameos. Now to speak to that John Cena moment I mentioned earlier. John Cena builds himself a car that has a projectile launcher things on either side that shoot out just big hunks of steel.
Because of course they do.
Sure, and he's using it to blow up cars and whatever. Cool.
Because of course he is.
Yeah. And then at the end, Dom is driving towards a large group of vehicles and there's no way out. Oh my gosh, he's gonna get stuck. And so John Cena's like, I've got this, you know, don't worry, brother, I'm ready to save you. And so he turns the guns down and then fires them and launches his car up and over the guardrail and smashes into all the other cars and they all explode. But while this is happening, his car's in the air and flipping over, and he like grabs his cross necklace and has this like moment of looking heroic and beautiful as he's sacrificing his life.
Jesus moment.
Yeah. And then everything explodes and Dom swerves around it and goes off on his continued adventure. And I don't think ever really reference. I mean, this movie ends pretty suddenly and on a huge quote unquote cliffhanger. So yeah.
But before this happens, John Cena is driving with Dom's son, and their rocket launcher car, something in it gets jammed or breaks. So he allows this like 8-year-old boy to climb out the window of the car onto...
I mean, this 8-year-old boy can drive a car better than I can.
But still, gets out of the car, while they're speeding 100 miles an hour, climbs onto the back and repairs part of it, and is literally talking to him the whole time, like, look what I'm doing, when he knows this man is speeding up to kidnap this child. Like, this whole thing is to protect Dom's son. And he's like, oh yeah, you can get out there by yourself, you're fine. First of all, could have gotten shot. They've been getting shot at this whole time. But then, yeah, Jason Momoa just snatches him off the back of the car, because that's how physics works, and kidnaps him for 5 seconds. And then when all this is happening, whatever, Dom catches up. I think it's after John Cena's character explodes. Helicopters come after them, and Dom's American muscle car it gets those weird...
2 grappling hooks get shot into the side, and they're trying to lift him up, but because his tires are touching the ground,
his car can't be lifted up. It's pure American muscle, and he's driving and somehow staying on the ground with these helicopters pulling him up. And then only when he wants to come off the ground to be lifted and dropped down onto the lower level to save his son does that happen. And then he turns really fast and makes the helicopters collide with each other and burst into flame, and then take out all the other vehicles coming after them, and then hits Jason Momoa's car with his son inside with a helicopter, and it just kind of spins a little bit, just enough that his son can projectile himself out of the vehicle and land in Dom's car.
There is a famous moment in the Hobbit movies where Legolas goes running up some rocks, and it just looks so bad because there's no physics for this to be based in, and everyone makes fun of that moment. The son jumping from one car to the other might rival how bad that looked. Like, it just... He's like moving half a mile an hour and then suddenly just like launches forward and then slows back down and lands in the car.
Well, they have about 18 shots in this movie that for some reason are like slow motion close-ups that look so horrible. Like some of Dom's arms while they're doing stuff. Like just
there's
awful.
Also a shot in this time before Dom hits his NOS button because that's such a big, heroic moment.
Even though in the past movies, if you use NOS when your car's on fire, you die. Not in this one, though.
Anyway, the camera does like a Deadpool intro spin around the CGI digi-doubles of Dom and his son and the car and move up his arm really awkwardly. Another weird slow-mo shot. Brie Larson gets shot, and apparently we care about her despite her being in the movie for maybe 5 minutes and talking to Dom, I think, once. She gets shot, and Vin Diesel's like super upset by this and picks her up. And when he goes to pick her up at the end, it goes from them just like talking at normal speed to suddenly this slow-mo of him picking her up like it's this great big moment, and the music swells. The bad guys have left. She's just been shot in the shoulder, which in these movies is way less than fatal.
Yeah.
And it's this dramatic carrying her to the car, and I'm just like, what are we doing? I swear this movie was written by middle schoolers and edited by people who have only ever watched the last 5 years of like YouTube and TikTok videos. It's appalling to look at, but kind of in a great way. And I guess like their market is kind of middle school and high school boys.
Yeah.
So fair enough. You're using the stuff that they do. But yeah, it's a wild movie. And at the start, they almost blow up the Vatican.
Yeah. But
and then Diesel saves the Vatican.
His pure Christian faith, Catholic faith, has saved the Vatican from a bomb bigger than a car.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so the bomb they're dragging or rolling around Rome at the start is just rolling and cannot be stopped. No matter what it hits, it just keeps rolling, which is wild. And then later in the movie, like 40 minutes after this bomb has gone off and completely been removed from the premise of the movie, Jason Momoa is like, hey, did you catch that? That was an homage to the 5th movie, which is where, my backstory comes from. I don't know if you caught that my bomb rolling around was an homage to that. And we're all like, Yes, Jason Momoa. We caught that. Thank you.
I didn't understand why that was relevant at all.
Well, yeah, I guess then I caught that.
Well, I heard him say it, but I was just like, okay.
Yeah, I don't get why he's saying it.
Oh.
Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah.
the bomb rolls around, yeah, it's like the fifth movie, great, cool, move on. But instead,
what part of the fifth movie?
does dragging the safe around.
Oh. Okay. That's stupid.
Yep, it is pretty dumb.
But yeah, so Jason Momoa's character is the son of that guy from Rio
Hernan Reyes, I believe.
who ran the city, and they killed him.
Yep. Well, The Rock killed him.
Yeah. But they caught him and stole all his money.
And they retroactively put Jason Momoa into the scenes.
Even though we just watched it and he's not in it.
Which, yeah. So it does a mix of shots from the fifth movie and some recreations from the fifth movie to put Jason Momoa into one of the side cars that's trying to help protect his father. And then when that car got knocked over the railing in the fifth movie, suddenly a CGI Jason Momoa goes flying out the side of it.
It's ridiculous.
And lands in the water.
But yeah, so that's their relationship. Then now he's after revenge because of all that. And also in part of it, he says, you stole all my money. And Dom says, I didn't steal your money. I burned it, which is not true because they stole like $100 million.
And that's what they've been living off of.
Yeah, they only burned like $1 million. So he's a liar.
Yeah. And then also he's like, you stole my money, blah, 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 blah. He continues to be absurdly wealthy and well off and stuff, and he's like, I hated my father, but I have to get revenge. Like, there's no, it
also goes into this background that he's just been psychotic his whole life and murderous, so vibes.
Hey,
and he shows it. So
yeah, there's literally, he like stabs a guy and then licks all the blood off the knife, which is really weird and gross,
and then kills these two nerdy tech guys and like tapes their faces into weird silly faces and paints their toenails. Like, he is a bananas person.
So to go way back to the beginning of this movie, Tyrese Gibson really wants to be a leader. He said this in past movies, and they finally let him lead a mission, and Ludacris has confirmed the intel for it, and they're going to go to Rome to perform a heist. But this is exactly what Jason Momoa wanted, and so it's just it all goes wrong, and this is how the bomb gets turned loose and whatever. And then they're kind of, after that, forced to just hide out. And so their portion of the movie is just trying not to get caught and go meet other people. And again, like, because this movie just ends, and there's going to be a sequel, I'm assuming what they've been putting into place, getting Jason Statham, trying to find black market computer stuff, all of this is going to pay off in that next movie. But in this movie, it's very much just like they're going on these side adventures that have no bearing on the main plot of this movie, which is Vin Diesel's son trying to keep him safe and Jason Momoa trying to torture Dom by killing everyone in his life.
Yeah. Mia's in it for like 2 seconds.
Yep.
She protects the son in a fight and is babysitting him, and then gives him over to Jacob and has to go home to Brian and her kids.
Yeah. And then, yeah, when John Cena takes the son, they go on like a little cross-country road trip. They hop on a plane. They're flying. When they get on the plane, there's a cameo by Paul Walker's daughter. And she gives him 3 bottles of Smirnoff, of like mini Smirnoffs. And he then gets them down into the like belly of the plane. And in there is another like small 2-person plane for them to fly out. Like,
it's like a kayak plane.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, kid, what do you need for ignition? You need a fuel and oxygen and a spark or whatever. And so he takes 3 mini bottles of Smirnoff and pours them in the gas tank and then hits the start button, and it just goes, and they're able to fly all the way to Portugal.
And for some reason, they make a joke about Rosé, which is kind of funny. John Cena's character in this movie does not belong in this franchise. It was almost like an identity thief type character, or like, you know, that kind of comedy. It wasn't meant for this. Like,
goofy uncle on a road trip.
Yeah, he's like
wearing
driving his old car from like the 80s, 90s, listening to like old tapes and jamming out and singing, and
he's wearing a goofy shirt that says like I have gas with a little gas pump on it or whatever, and he's wearing like bright colored bathing suit shorts.
Like, he's not meant for this genre of movie in this one.
Yeah.
He's just a silly, goofy little guy. And like, I don't know. I think he would have been funnier in some kind of like comedy, which is what he's in when he's not in this.
Yeah. And I think part of it is like he looks like he's dressed to be in a comedy. He like looks like he's going to be funny, and they don't really give him any jokes.
Yeah.
Like, he's still a serious,
and the ones he has
character.
Like doesn't land because it's not that kind of movie.
Yeah.
So like him like singing the song just kind of comes out awkward a little bit, but if it was in any other movie, it would have been really funny. Or like, what part did we really laugh at? The one joke that kept hitting was him talking about the son swearing, and he says swear words are for sung lyrics and stubbed toes only, which was so funny. And then eventually, you know, his car rocket launches and blows someone up because he's, you know, allowing this child to be a murderer, and the child is the one shooting the bombs at people, and he's like, no, you can swear now. It's for song lyrics, stub toes, and like super cool explosions or whatever. So,
yep. Yeah, and so that's kind of...
Oh, they blow up the team at the end. Supposedly someone shoots that rocket at the plane that all the team is in.
Oh, yeah.
And they crash into like a mountain. So we don't know if they're okay, but I'm assuming they are.
They are, because no one dies in these. Yeah. So and not only does the plane like explode, it explodes kind of off screen. It gets hit and it's veering, and then it turns behind a mountain, and then like 5 seconds later a bit of an explosion comes out from behind the mountain. So
and Roman warns
and it's
them.
over water.
Yeah, Roman warns them before they get hit. He's like, guys, duck. So I'm assuming they jump out. They're fine.
They're fine. I am almost certain.
Because the guy who runs the agency is secretly a bad guy. Shocking, we never would have guessed a character that just got introduced would secretly be bad.
And not only that, but the guy who's pretending to be the good guy, just like in the previous agency
8 movies
movie where we think the girl who's helping the Rock is supposed to be a good guy helping them, and then she turns out to be part of the bad guys in the 6th one.
Yeah.
So yeah, been here before, seen that before. But yeah, honestly, despite us saying it's all really dumb and we've seen this all before in every other Fast and Furious movie, Jason Momoa makes this movie worth it.
Yeah, I would go just to see him, honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, that wraps up our thoughts on Fast X.
Are they right?
If this is the finish line, I'm not afraid.
All right, thank you for listening to our podcast this week. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Nerd and Normie, and tune in every Monday for a new episode.
And whatever platform you're listening on, please give us a 5-star review, or if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Thank you.